All right, so we don't keep everyone here all day. Let's go ahead and get started. Today is Wednesday, May 31st, and this is the sixth Quality of Life Committee meeting for 2023. Really, Matt? Wow. Today's meeting will focus on nature-based initiatives and green infrastructure solutions. So I'm happy to invite up. We have several people on the agenda. We have an animal welfare advisory committee discussion. We have a resolution regarding Eat Local Month, and we also have Thrive and NOLA Tree projects. I'm super excited for all of that. I was hoping the animal welfare folks were bringing puppies today, so I wore jeans, but there are no puppies. Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Roll call. Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Jeruso. Councilmember King absent. Councilmember Green. Present.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas absent. We have a quorum.
Great, Anita. Can we go ahead and approve the minutes from the last Quality of Life meeting, April 24th, 2023? Councilmember Green has moved. Councilmember Jeruso seconded. All in favor? All right. Let's go ahead and bring up the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee discussion. Michelle, who's the director of Zeus's Rescues, where I rescued my two termite mix animals. And Michael, say your last name, Shackman, director of the New Orleans Bulldog Rescue.
I do have puppies in my bag, Leslie. I'm just, yeah, they're little though.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Councilwoman Harris, for the invitation today and to the committee for your consideration of our proposal. We recognize that animal welfare is not an issue that typically percolates to the top of policy discussions of city government, so we're grateful for this time and forum. As we'll briefly cover today, New Orleans is in the midst of an overpopulation crisis. The need for help dealing with animals in our city has never been greater, and this has significant effects on the quality of life in New Orleans. This includes threats to public safety, the expenditure of public funds, and the utilization of limited city resources, confidence in and engagement with city government, and finally, what can be the difference in preserving individual relationships between your constituents, particularly those with limited resources and their companion animals. Local advocates are being forced into the impossible scenario of either accepting defeat and ignoring the issues or making enormous and unsustainable commitments for our businesses, organizations, and homes. Today, we're asking for the council's help to alleviate this burden and to improve outcomes for everyone involved. Our goal is to minimize your time spent on this issue, but maximize your impact. Specifically, we're here to communicate what we're seeing day to day in providing direct services to animals and the people connected to them, identify significant issues and gaps in services that currently exist, and offer some initial steps that we think can be implemented to improve outcomes that benefit animals, citizens, and city service providers. I want to mention at the onset that this proposal is cost neutral, and we're also we're not requesting any specific council staff resources.
Hi, I'm Michelle Ingram, director of Zeus's Rescues and owner of Zeus's Place. Once again, thank y'all all for taking the time to listen to us today. I have a couple of prepared remarks to go along with the slides we have here. As Michael mentioned, New Orleans does indeed have an animal overpopulation crisis. Since 2019, over 2,500 animals have been euthanized in the city contracted shelter. Thousands more have been taken in by local rescue groups. Since 2019, Zeus Rescues alone has taken in 2,979 animals. We've adopted out 2,457 animals, and we have 171 currently in our program today. Another example is Take Paws. They've taken in 5,603 animals since 2019, and they currently have 180 in their program. This is just two of the many private rescues around New Orleans. You add in the totals from Arno, Take Paws, Trampled Rose, Bulldog Rescue, and the myriad others. These numbers are well over 15,000 pets in private rescues that have been adopted out and serviced since 2019. We do this all with private funds, grant writing, and without the aid of any public fundings. Based on my research, the majority of animals receiving services that are not being helped by, which are being helped by private organizations, are way greater than those receiving city funding. This is definitely not sustainable. Many more are never actually officially counted because they never receive services from an organization. These are people who found kittens or puppies roaming the streets and just take them in on their own. Excluding disaster response, the need has never been greater. Although we've never been able to gather comprehensive data, we know the increase is due to a combination of overbreeding or backyard breeders, the growth in feral populations, the lack of access to spay-neuter services, veterinary costs, decreased availability and affordability of housing that allows pets, lack of public education awareness about overpopulation, and post-COVID owner surrenders. This crisis has wide-ranging effects. Unwanted dogs and cats endure significant suffering and harm. We could fill the entire time allotted with heartbreaking stories. I can tell you stories about the animals that brought me to tears, that have endured abuse so bad that I'm left in tears at night. I could tell you of dogs with their muzzle tied shut so they can't eat or drink. I could tell you about cats being used as target practice. I can tell you about dogs being tossed in a canal outside of Costco during a rainstorm and having to swim for their lives outside the pumping station. I could tell you about dogs being tied up outside hurricanes, but I won't today. I'm gonna try to focus on the positive and some proposed solutions to end this crisis. There's also the public safety aspect that Michael has talked about. Overpopulation endangers citizens and threatens the quality of life of our constituents. It also has bad optics for our city. So we, the rescue advocates, are forced into the possible choice of simply turning our back on the issues or commit to these enormous and unsustainable commitments. Dogs and cats are literally being thrown over my fence on Napoleon Avenue a couple of times a week. And I'm gonna take a second to look at one of these. This was a particularly heartbreaking dump of a dog who actually didn't survive. He was in horrible shape and ended up spending the entire night just roaming around my front yard. And when we came into work the next day, sadly, we brought it to the vet and it had to be euthanized. So you can see the dog trying to stand up and walk, and this went on for hours and hours and hours overnight. And like I said, this happens to me at least twice a week right now. It's amping up. Just this week, I had one dumped at my boarding location overnight, a small dachshund, and he was matted and covered in burrs and couldn't stretch out his legs to walk because of the amount of thorns that were stuck in his burrs. And that was just at the boarding location. This doesn't just happen to me. This happens at all rescue facilities that have a brick and mortar place. And as you know, in the canal, under the bridge, along the street. And a lot of the time we have people that come up that want to surrender their pet that say, if you don't take this animal right now, I'm just going to let it go on Napoleon. And you know that you're gonna have to go chase that animal down. So we're stuck with taking in the animal. So let's see. Forgot where I was for a second. This is terrifying for the animals. Sometimes they get stolen out of my front yard before I get into work. Sometimes they die in the front yard waiting for us to arrive in the morning. One time a dog with parvo was dumped in the yard. The dog died within hours of us arriving, and we had to pull up 6 inches of soil, sanitize and treat the ground underneath, and then replace the soil to make it safe again. We had a more coordinated intake system for our Orleans Parish. This possibly could have been avoided. Vets, sporting businesses, and local rescue groups are inundated with requests for service. When you get no less than 20 calls and emails every single day to surrender a pet. Once again, this is an untenable situation. Our local ACOs are overwhelmed. Just a few examples of ACO calls that I personally have taken was during Mardi Gras on next Wednesday. I got a call that a dog had been on the side of the interstate at the base of the high rise for 2 days. It couldn't walk and it was sitting there with traffic whizzing by, and multiple calls, thank you, to 911, 311, and the SVCA went unanswered. So as soon as I got the call, I went out, I walked along the embankment, and unfortunately, the dog had passed away by the time I got there. It had just started to show signs of rigor. So I picked up its dead body, walked along the embankment, and brought him to Metairie Small for cremation and tried to find the owner, which I wasn't able to find. I've been in the canal outside of Costco so many times when calls to the 911, 311, SPCA didn't go answered, that I actually have a canal pack ready to go. So when I get a call that there's a dog in the canal outside of Costco, I pick up my pack and I go. Just 2 months ago, I got a call from an ambulance driver who was actually on shift, working 911 calls, and he was over at the city pumping station on Old Gentilly Road and witnessed a dog being tossed out of a moving car. They called 911, 311, SPCA. It went into this loop to where the ambulance driver was saying, I'm taking 911 calls right now. I've seen this happen. Please send somebody out. It's getting dark. No one went out. I went out at daybreak, got the dog. It was completely covered in Demodex mange, starving, and took it in. Let's see. There has to be a better way. There is no way for someone to easily report an injured, abandoned, or stray animal right now. The protocol is to call 911. 911 operators do not know what to do with that call. You call 311, they tell you to call 911, who tells you to call NOPD. And if you call the SPCA, you get stuck in that loop again. So what ends up happening? These animals are just being dumped on these local rescues who once again are not receiving any funding outside of grant writing and adoption fees and give NOLA Day at this point. There has to be a better way. I could go on and on and on, citing specific examples of how local private rescues are bearing the burden of rescuing and housing and providing medical care for the homeless pet population of Orleans Parish. But I'd rather spend the rest of our allotted time with Michael giving you some specific solutions that are proven to work in other communities. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here in Orleans Parish, but we do have to do something. Michael?
Thank you, Michelle. As you know, our current approach entails a cooperative endeavor agreement with the LASPCA or their subsidiary, the New Orleans Humane Law and Rescue. In addition, we have dozens of rescue groups and private shelters, many veterinary clinics in the parish, including at least 3 nonprofits, and important to note, a lot of individual citizens who are picking up dogs and doing the work on their own because they don't know what else to do and because rescues are inundated. There is no official coordination amongst these stakeholders. So don't get me wrong, there's, significant things happening and people are helping animals, but it's all happening in siloed efforts. There is good news.
Yeah, can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
I hate to tell you, but we're hearing this all the time. I think if you really listen to the essence of what Councilmember King discussed with his proposed ordinance on Vu-Carré Commission, it was, you have Vu-Carré, HDLC, safety and permits, the fire office, and you're maybe saying, well, Joe, what does this have to do with animals? But it's all related. You're looking for a streamlined process so people can figure out what to do when there is a problem. As you point out, Michelle, like if you call 911, you go to maybe 311, who maybe goes to SPCA, who maybe answers the call. And so you're stuck in a feedback loop. And I think what we're consistently looking for is how to make these processes more seamless and everybody's talking to one another. And so I applaud the efforts that you have. I just want you to know that I think this is an ongoing conversation for this council in particular, because I think whether it's consolidating code enforcement into one office, whether it's the discussion we're ultimately going to have about VCC, whether it's this discussion, whether it's homelessness, whatever the issue is, they have too many different people who are participating. And when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, the work isn't ultimately being done. And really, I'll say it more bluntly than you did, the nonprofits are bearing the brunt of it, which means you have to absorb the cost, time, effort, resources. I'm going to say personnel because manpower is not the right word to absorb those issues. And so I just want you to know that I think this group understands that from a very broad perspective and are going to support what you're asking for in terms of trying to make this less burdensome and onerous on people who are in a nonprofit space and how we wrap everybody together into a more productive and constructive conversation and results.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And to your point, a huge part of our sort of map for moving forward is templates from other cities that we have seen other cities greatly improve their outcomes for people and for animals and without investing funding. What these success stories typically have in common, 3 key points. The first, the foundation, is stakeholder engagement and coordination. This really means just getting everybody to the table, identifying the needs, taking inventory of the current capacity and redundancies, and then developing strategies based on local variables and proven best practices. And I'll mention that including the city government is a big part of this, that private organizations can get together, but what we've learned from talking with these other cities is that having the buy-in from the city leadership makes a big difference. In addition, we have access to spay neuter services as a key variable in combating overpopulation.
The things that I've noticed, it's really hard for the people to get across the river right now with their pet to get spay neutering done. We're proposing some sort of coordination with local vets. We also currently have 3 nonprofit vets on this side of the river to help ease the burden of spay neuter services. Pet overpopulation and homelessness can be curtailed with spay neuter services, and our shelter diversion program, which we do with the local food bank and providing supplies and vaccines needed once again on this side of the river, which is bearing the brunt of everything because people can't make it across the river with their pet to get these very vital services.
And just one last point on that shelter intake mitigation. Another common theme in these success stories is a proactive approach versus reactive. And by that, I mean, it's much easier to help a dog with an owner and figure out the reason they want to surrender their dog, whether it's a training issue, a cost issue, something like that. It's much easier to help a dog with an owner than help a dog once it's been surrendered, once it's in the shelter. So what does this look like in New Orleans? We've proposed an animal welfare advisory committee that would be established to provide advice, feedback, guiding principles, policies, and subject matter expertise to the council of the city of New Orleans on matters relating to animal welfare and animal-related city services. We have some ideas, especially based on these national best practices as to what could be implemented, but we don't want to put the cart before the horse, and we would ask for the creation of this committee to really examine what's happening locally, look at the data, and then make more specific recommendations. However,
And I'm going to interrupt you here. Hey, it's me. So we've talked privately about the advisory committee. We get a lot of advice from non-official committees. For example, when we talk about affordable housing or we talk about ARPA funding, there's a loose coalition of advocates who come to us that aren't necessarily sanctioned by the city of New Orleans. So how would being a sort of city council created committee be different from what you could do privately and still advise us? Does that make sense?
yes, well, if you think the city is obligated by law to maintain an animal control program, so we think there's value in having that function officially represented through this committee. That we would ask that having, an official structure in place, official membership of this committee, bringing these stakeholders to the table, that there's value in having that, official stamp and endorsement of the city council does make a difference. In addition, as Michelle mentioned, all of this work being done right now, not all of it, but most of it is being privately funded. We're hustling all the time for donations, adoptions, and we know from speaking with some of these other cities that there's a lot of other grants out there and that funding is much more likely to come if we have the city buy-in. So that doesn't necessarily require, an ordinance or a resolution, but it certainly supports that work. But again,
So Jefferson Parish actually uses the overages from the rabies tag fees, which every animal has to have in that process, to actually cover the cost of low-cost spay neutering. And they've had overages and give money back to the city. That's how well Jefferson Parish is doing their spay neuter program right now. Is it perfect? No. Does it work better than what's happening right now and it's sustainable? Absolutely. Does it cost the city anything? No, you actually end up making money and we spay neuter more animals. So there are these programs that we just need to come together with and utilize and have one unified voice on that. I know you're shaking your head, Councilman Jeruso, so.
I'm shaking my head because some of this stuff is just low hanging fruit and we just need to be implementing other parishes' better practices. And again, it's just about people talking to each other. I mean, that's the bottom line.
I'm here to make action happen. What
Yeah.
can I do? Health. I mean, we're doing it all day, every day. We're living it and animals are dying and we're seeing the hard. So I'm here to help in any way I can with my vast knowledge of animal care and my connections around the city to unify this and stop the pet overpopulation problem that we have in Orleans Parish. So I'm open to all suggestions. We're bringing you what's happening in other cities and working, but
I do think kind of maybe, and I don't want to speak for, it, but maybe what the chair is saying is, you want to have this good balance, right? Like on the one hand, you want an advisory committee that does and has the necessary people who have subject matter expertise, but you don't want to just meet to meet, number one. And then number two, that what they say is also achievable. Because a lot of times advocacy groups come to us with asks that are completely unachievable. I mean, I looked through the PowerPoint, like obviously having a committee of like 11 people, one from each council district, somebody from NOPD, and I think we have these models. Trying to think right now, I mean, we had the fee, this is predates y'all, but we had the fee advisory committee and we had other ones. I think having a space with a common agenda makes a lot of sense, and sort of like, as you all are saying, looking at other municipalities. Because sort of the consistent thing I say is if Jefferson Parish, St. Bernard, St. Tammany, whoever can do it, then why can't Orleans be in a similar position?
And Councilwoman, if I can make one more point to your question about the importance of having, the city engagement, is that the city, there's a lot more to animal welfare than animal control. The city has chosen to outsource that function of city government. We're looking for leadership that's accountable to the city council and to the public. So that's why we think we want this under the umbrella of the city council.
So I guess my question is, you're not trying to displace the current contractor, which is the LASPCA, right?
Absolutely not.
And I've seen the proposed ordinance, which I haven't presented to this committee yet, because I do think we need to have fulsome discussion of it. Number 5 says the president of the board of any organization contracted to provide animal control services. Why wouldn't you just specify LASPCA?
Well, it's currently the LASPCA, but I'll, defer to the council and to the, city leadership as to whether that continues to be in the city's best interest in the future.
Okay, I think there is some rub, and I'm just gonna be honest because I'm always open and honest with y'all. I know you're critics of LASPCA. I can tell you I've been in the feedback loop of 311, 911. We talked about this again privately when I tried to get a dog rescued off a porch that was sitting there for 2 days and no one was picking up the phone. And then finally I just called in a favor to the local district to say, hey, can you come get this dog? But that shouldn't be the way it is. So I think that there are some suggested fixes that this committee could whether it's officially sanctioned or loosely based on how we fix 311, 911 with input from the LASPCA. What I don't want to get into is some sort of turf war where it's just critique or criticism of the SPCA, because I do think they do good work. And so I just want to make sure that we're balancing that, especially if a member of this committee, whether sanctioned or loose, would be sitting on it.
Sure.
Does that make sense to y'all?
Absolutely. And it's a hard job. That's what we're trying to say. It's not just one organization that can do it. They are tasked with that and they're being paid for that. But there's all this other stuff that's happening around that also deals with animals, and we're all piecemealing all this together. So we want to bring everybody together and be accountable and all work together because we can do so much more.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what I would want from this committee is a report with actionable action items, to Councilmember Jerusso's point of, okay, what can we do policy wise as a city council? And then administratively as the city administration to implement those suggestions. So I think we can talk more about that committee. Are there any questions from the dais, Councilmember Green?
Well, I guess I'll just ask this straightforward. Have you all talked to the SPCA, and what is the impediment to you working with the SPCA to address some of these issues? Since the city has, it certainly was, something that's been going on for a while. We've chosen to engage them as the cooperative endeavor partner. Have you had any communications with them?
Thank you, Councilman. To your point, we continue to partner with the LASPCA. Our rescue pulls dogs from the LASPCA. I've been emailing them as recently as yesterday, so we certainly have a working relationship. And I want to reiterate that this initiative is designed to be collaborative, inclusive, transparent, but this work that's going on is bigger than any individual organization. So there's no impediment to us working with any organization. And we hope everybody can sort of come under this umbrella. The idea, again, is just to bring everybody together and sort of take an inventory of our resources. We don't have any objections to anybody joining. In fact, we reached out to the LASPCA, I spoke with their immediate past president, several weeks ago requesting a meeting. I spoke with her personally. I know they weren't able to get, any type of board position in place. It's my understanding, although some of them may be here today. I don't know if that's appropriate to. We welcome.
Hey, yeah, so to make public comment, you'll have to fill out a card, but we'll get to that.
But to your point, Councilman, we absolutely want to work with everybody, and I think it's important that we do for success.
Do your suggestions come based on conversation with the SPCA? For example, the committee, the membership of the committee, is that based on something that you want to do or some conversations you have?
The membership, the suggested membership of the committee is really just based on templates from other council advisory committees. We'll defer to the council's expertise as to who might be, most fit to serve on that. However, we would like to point out our goal is to get people who really understand the nature of this work, that it's, that there's people who, it's not just about developing policy. It's a lot of nitty gritty stuff, and it's important that people understand that to serve this function.
It's a challenge when you say that though, because then I'll ask you, I mean, it's almost suggesting that the city is not analyzing the work done by the SPCA to get done all of the things that you're suggesting that have to be done. Specifically, I asked about the appointments, but actually, to be very honest with you, and it'll be something that we address later on, I would like to see the SPCA sitting there with you.
I
as
agree.
opposed to
I
us having a
totally agree
meeting.
with that.
Right, as opposed to us having a meeting where I'm not able to ask them their desires to participate in this process. So that's all, just something for the future.
Yeah, and again, we have a representative from SPCA here. If you'd like to come up now, and we'll get a card from you later. Good morning.
Which mic? Good morning. My name is Colette White. I'm the current president of the board for the Louisiana SPCA. And I'm really here today as an observer to gather some information. This has been recently brought to the attention of the board. We had a board meeting just last week. So no, we do not have a position, an official position from the board. We actually need more information because we have very little information about this proposed ordinance. But what I will say is that the LA SPCA has provided this service to the city of New Orleans for a very long time. And we are always open and willing to discuss anything, to provide information. A lot of information you can find on our website. And I'd be happy, as well as any of the other board members and Councilman Harris, you alluded to the fact that you spoke with one of the board members recently. We are happy to participate, and we would welcome a conversation about this. Thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? Do y'all want to go ahead and wrap up?
Sure. One thing I just want to touch on, outside of animal control, there's a lot of collaboration that could be had specifically within city service providers. A couple examples that I'll just mention briefly. One issue that we have now, if a dog bites somebody, typically they are quarantined at the shelter and held pending a final adjudication in municipal court. If that case gets continued, that dog usually sits in quarantine for longer, taking up a kennel space, potentially accruing fees for the owner. And not to mention, most dogs that bite do so out of anxiety, and the dog usually is deteriorating. Other cities have worked to expedite these cases simply by getting their district attorney and municipal court on board to docketing them on a certain day, whether it's once every 2 weeks or whatever it is. And then that helps get a resolution quicker. It helps get the dog out quicker, less fines. As a lagniappe, if they get a judge who can implement some type of diversionary program that makes reunification with the owner more likely, all the better. But these are some, that's just one example of city services that could be sort of streamlined to benefit people, animals, and city service providers. In addition, I know Michelle's worked with EMTs and hospitals.
Yes, I work with Tulane Hospital, and I'm working on a collaborative agreement with Auctioneer right now. When a homeless person or a veteran is refusing medical services because they have a pet with them, The animal is transported to my boarding services where I board for free, and then they have their medical procedures, and then we bring them back. We also provide homeless services. We provide food and shelter for animals for the homeless population living under the bridge. We provide them veterinary care, whatever they need to keep them out of the shelter program and with their owner who cannot otherwise provide that. If there's some way to have that happen on a larger scale, that would be great. We'd see a lot less animals in the shelter system.
And the last thing I want to mention, I know the city council has limited resources. We're not requesting any funding or any council time or staff energy beyond consideration of the work product of this committee and the minimum requirements necessary for compliance with public meeting laws.
Thank you. Can you both give your nonprofit email address so people can donate? Michelle, that's amazing that you're helping homeless, unhoused people
Thank you.
with their animals.
Yeah, so it's zeusrescues@gmail.com, ZEUSRESCUES@gmail.com.
And New Orleans Bulldog Rescue at neworleansbulldogs@gmail.com.
Thank you. Are there any public comments?
We have some online comments.
Okay.
First one is from Zoe Heimbrock. She says, the need for the development of an animal welfare advisory committee is both pressing and urgent. There's a constant influx of social media posts pleading with our community for resources to take in abused and neglected animals roaming our streets. Within neighborhood and community social media groups, the cycle of posts remains the same. Details regarding local crimes, leads on affordable housing, and help needed to locate or rescue a wandering animal. Our local rescues are so full that neighbors and friends hesitate to help strays out of fear that there will be nowhere for them to go. Actionable steps need to be taken immediately for the sake of both the animals and people of our city. Next comment is from Monica Hugo. She says, please consider a request to create an animal welfare advisory committee for Orleans Parish. This new committee would provide advice, feedback, guiding principles, funding recommendations, and other subject matter expertise to city leaders and promote the implementation of demonstrated national best practices in New Orleans. Challenges faced by animal welfare organizations in our community have never been greater, and this results-oriented initiative will enhance collaboration and communication among all stakeholders. We have a comment from Randall Long, who says, please support creation of the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The folks presenting do great work and need support. Thanks. Emily Maybeal comments, I encourage the committee members to seriously consider establishing an Animal Welfare Advisory Committee. The systems that promote animal welfare in New Orleans are siloed and contribute greater results for animals with collaborative efforts. Evidence shows that organizations working together with aligned goals and using evidence-based practices accomplish greater change. This needs oversight and must be a sustainable approach to maintain momentum and create lasting effects. Helen Rogers comments, the challenges faced by animal welfare organizations in our community have never been greater, and this results-oriented initiative will enhance collaboration and communication among all stakeholders. And finally, we have Kelsey Confrida, who comments, the city needs support from professionals in dealing with our prominent animal welfare problem and vice versa. Michael and Michelle work endlessly within their respective animal rescue to abate the relentless abandonment, mistreatment, and overpopulation of domesticated animals in New Orleans. All of the shelters and rescues in the city are and have been well above capacity for so long. This doesn't have to be a regular thing in the city anymore, and having this committee is the next step forward. That's it for the online comment.
Thank you, Anita. Michelle, Michael, thank you so much. I also want to encourage you to get the word out about training. I'm a person who has resources but cannot find dog trainers in New Orleans, and I think that's a result of the COVID aftermath. I know some trainers who were working pre-COVID no longer are, but your point about training to be a responsible dog owner is well taken, and I think something that this committee could give recommendations on how we can make that happen. I would also encourage you to get with Colette now, so y'all can work out and then come back, so we can talk more about this animal advisory committee. I do think it's important for us to pull our wagons together and circle around so that we can make sure that our pets, our strays, everyone's neutered, everyone is healthy. And again, Michelle, thank you for working so diligently to rescue dogs,
Thank you.
especially with our homeless population. And thank
Thank
you
you.
for my two critters.
Thank you
All right,
for
bye-bye.
hearing us today. Thank you so much.
All right.
Anita, next agenda item?
Next on the agenda, we have the resolution R 23-244 declaring June as Eat Local Month and supporting the Eat Local movement.
All right, do we have anyone from Eat Local? Come on up. Can you all introduce yourselves?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Terrence Jackson. I'm a fifth generation farmer from Tuskegee, Alabama, the farm outreach manager at Sprout NOLA and leadership team member for Greater New Orleans Growers Alliance.
Hi, I'm Bryn Como. I am the communications manager for the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council, and I also am a director with Eat Local New Orleans.
Hi, my name is Devin Wright. I'm the Policy and Research Manager with Sprout New Orleans and former leadership member with the Greater New Orleans Growers Alliance.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. So my colleagues we've introduced ourselves. I'm gonna let you know a little bit about the organizations that power a greener New Orleans. Oh, do we have the?
We'll click.
Here's it. Okay, cool. So the three organizations that power a greener New Orleans are New Orleans Food Policy Action Council, the Greater New Orleans Growers Alliance, which we refer to as GNOGA, if you hear that, and Sprout NOLA. So New Orleans Food Policy Action Council is a broad-based coalition of individuals, businesses, and organizations working together to shape public food and agriculture policy. The Greater New Orleans Growers Alliance includes growers and allies who are harnessing collective physical and political power to create an urban food and farm system that sustains both growers and eaters. And then Sprout NOLA supports, established, and develops small-scale and sustainable farmers with technical and social support. So this specific campaign was born out of the Food Production Working Group, which all of these organizations are represented in within the Food Policy Action Council. The Food Policy Action Council was reauthorized last week with the support of you all unanimously at the last city council meeting. This campaign was born within that working group, but it's based on decades of work and specific targeted actions, such as the small box retail study. We've leaned into grower wisdom, multi-generational wisdom with those such as Terrence working with us, and generation from our elders, or our young elders. So. And this is just a little bit of the history of some of our specific targeted action.
Our goals. Let's grow a future for New Orleans that builds its rich food culture and economy by transforming farming and gardening within the city limits from allowed to encouraged. Right now, penalties and legislation created without growers in mind are preventing countless farmers and gardeners from growing food within New Orleans. Food is a central part of city culture, and once we include growing food in that vision, it can be used as tools for resilience, health, commerce, and joy. Resilience. Climate change is disproportionately impacting New Orleans, increasing green spaces, reduce heat, improve air quality, and reduce risk to flood and stormwater runoff. Health, urban agriculture nourishes communities from garden to plate. By creating green spaces that mitigates climate change, nurture communities, and increase access to local fresh food. Commerce. Urban agriculture creates jobs and keeps vital dollars circulating in New Orleans' local economy, which we all know we need. Enjoy. Urban agriculture and green spaces are neighborhood amenities that contributes to the sense of place, improving community well-being, and help help reduce crime and violence. These places provide a safe haven for kids, for young and older adults. This is an intergenerational place of learning and care.
Okay, so first I want to say thank you all for the time that you've spent with us prior to this meeting. And for the sake of brevity and because we've already had a lot of this conversation, I'm going to go through these planks quickly. So first off, we are trying to address, in order to achieve that goal of making urban agriculture not just allowed but encouraged, we're trying to address issues related to land access. The pathway that we see forward for this is to increase long-term land access and security for growers through improvements to our local public land access program, which is NORA's Growing Green program. Secondly, we're hoping to increase access to municipal water systems, which is increasingly important given that we are having more periods of drought, which cause crop loss and other negative impacts for our productivity of our farms and gardens. So we're establishing or hoping to establish a clear pathway and process for growers to work with Sewerage and Water Board so that they can address uniquely agricultural issues quickly and effectively. And I can speak to more about any of these planks as we move forward. But again, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to be kind of broad. Third, we're going to be talking or hoping to address blight citation, and we want to update city code to explicitly allow for regenerative agricultural practices and to prevent any lack of clarity about what is and is not permissible within that blight code. So things like cover cropping, native meadows, and perennial crop systems that are in this kind of mid space. We want to carve out some clarity around what is and is not allowable so that growers have clarity. And then lastly, an urban ag liaison position, which we're hoping to house a staff member within city government, likely Office of Resilience and Sustainability, because we've already had a conversation with that office. They're familiar with this kind of a staff position and are interested in having this within their space. And that liaison's job is to advocate on behalf of growers and support growers as they navigate city processes. So this is a way for us to create a two-way street between growers and city government. There's already a lot of confusion about how growers access city government, and we want to kind of help liaise that relationship. Overall, all of these, we've been making progress on all of these issues already. We've met with a lot of you. We've met with various agencies in order to kind of make headway on each of these issues. We've met with ORS, we've met with Sewerage and Water Board, we've met with city kind of different stakeholders within our community, and we feel really confidently having incorporated feedback we've heard from you all, as well as those other entities. We just need city council support to kind of push our solutions forward and get that extra kind of support that we need to really make these large scale structural solutions a reality. All right.
Sure. So as Devin mentioned, we have broad support. We've been able to connect and meet with most of you. In addition to a lot of staff members, we've been able to connect with different city departments. We also have over 550 unique petition signatures, in addition to 50 organizational sign-ons. And those are partners in public health, partners in housing, partners across various sectors that are not only food and agriculture that have signed on to agree to expand urban agriculture with us.
So what is the ask? We ask that you all recommend resolution R 23-244 to full council. This resolution generally supports local food and commits council to working with the grower community to address the issues and advances the solutions proposed in A Greener New Orleans. We're happy to answer any questions that you have at this time or put you in contact with farmers who face these issues themselves.
Councilmember Green, any questions?
Yes, I would like to see you all have a conference, and maybe it takes place at, I don't know, where the people who are growing right now, for example, there's a couple of locations within my district that they can come and hear more about it and learn about it. But I'd also like to have some specifics, because I see the language that you've used, and I know that we can address it later on. But for example, I understand that one of the requests is that, tell me about the Sewage and Water Board request. Maybe I'm not going to make an assumption, because I want you all to tell me what the request is of farmers from the Sewage and Water Board.
Sure. So Okay, so Sewerage and Water Board already has a policy on their books that if you are not using sewerage services or sanitation services, that you do not have to pay for those things. So this is called an irrigation only lot. And growers, there's a public education component to this to let growers know that this exists. So if you are on a lot that does not have a structure, no bathroom, no sink or anything like that, and is just for irrigation, so the water is coming in and it is going into the ground, you only pay for irrigation. So there's a public education component that we're working on. But then Sewerage and Water Board, also, we run into issues where growers will call and say, hi, I want an agricultural meter, or I want an irrigation only account, or I need that to be switched. And you have to call 6 different times before you get in touch with a staff person that knows what you're talking about. So we want a clear process where growers don't have to spend hours of their time and kind of add significant stress before they can get their, residential lot correctly turned into an irrigation only account. The other issue is that growers will call, they'll get someone on the line that knows what they're doing. They'll have that account switched to irrigation only. And then after having a conversation with Sewerage and Water Board, we realized that employees will actually see that it's irrigation only and be like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And then reapply those services of sanitation and sewerage to those accounts because they think it's an error that it's only irrigation. Because we are talking about a not majority of lots in the city of New Orleans, right? Like most lots are not irrigation only. So there needs to be training amongst staff. There needs to be a clear pathway for our growers to call a specific person, call anyone at Sewerage and Water Board and kind of put them in touch with the correct powers that be, if that makes sense. So basically it's these irrigation only accounts that we need a clear pathway to address these issues about billing in particular.
How many irrigation accounts only are there in New Orleans, do you think? And where does it reach the point where the Sewage and Water Board would be concerned about the cost? Or does it?
This is an opportunity that Sewage and Water Board can take to be a national model for urban agriculture. It's a pretty progressive measure to have a water only service that they provide. So our urban ag liaison position would help to fulfill that disconnect. So there would either be someone that lives within Sewage and Water Board or someone that lives within the city that would be able to be that go-to person instead of, having to retrain new staff.
Also, to be clear, this doesn't cost Sewerage and Water Board anything. It's actually accurately billing them for the services that they use.
What do you think? I thought the request. Look, because I hear and there's just confusion, so I guess I might as well get it out right now. I appreciate this opportunity.
Sure. Yeah.
What was the issue that you're summarizing relative to cost? You say it doesn't cost Sewage and Water Board anything because they're billing, but they're billing whom?
They're billing growers for irrigation or for water coming in, for sewerage and for sanitation.
But just not the sewer portion of it, since it doesn't go back into the
Right.
city sewer
So
system.
growers
They're billing
aren't
just for the
using
water.
sanitation or sewerage, and so they are being incorrectly charged for services that they are not actually using.
Okay.
So this is, I guess that it does cost Sewerage and Water Board something, but they are actually inappropriately billing these residents for services
Well,
that they are not getting.
For the sewer part of it, right?
Yes.
For the sewer part of it.
Mhm.
I encourage you to recognize that the council has an appointment to the Sewage and Water Board, and of course, individual council members will help if that's necessary. We've gotten results with working through the Sewage and Water Board, a variety of ways. We have a point person probably in each office who's a community or constituent services liaison, but maybe we'll work that out as we go along. Tell me about the Nora's Growing Green program and what the limitations are and how we can expand on it.
Does anyone else want to do it, or you want me?
Sure, I
What
can.
would you like to see?
Sure. So currently the Growing Green process has a few issues. One of the major ones being that the leases cannot be recorded legally. And another issue being that at the end of the three.
Well,
sorry.
I'm gonna stop you just because that seems like a significant issue. Why would that be the case? Why do you mean every lease should be able to be recorded legally, but why not?
Precisely. That's also why we're here asking for clarity as well. Do you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, so it's a term of their leases that we don't actually have a clear answer to why that clause is in there. In meetings with city council members that consistently comes up as like a what? That doesn't make any sense and is actually a real detriment to the resident participants of this program. So we're looking for clarity on why that is in the leases as well. We're planning to have a meeting with Nora at the end of this month, and we've actually already worked with council members Morel and Moreno to get their support on this land access kind of plank. So like I was talking about before, when we're already working on these issues, we just want full council support behind it to move things forward.
No need for me to beat around the bush. This is the reason that we meet, to answer the questions. It's obviously legal to record every lease that you have. That's not a aberration in state law. It actually is legal. What is the reason though, or the concern with recording a lease involving the Growing Greens project specifically? Is there something that you would be able to say right now that you'd want us to address? We have 4 great attorneys on this board, on this council. Maybe one of them can address that issue.
Yeah,
What makes this defy state law?
well, we want this to follow state law in that
I
we
know.
want to be able to record the leases legally so that if growers run into a dispute with Nora or as their landlord, so when growers run into a dispute with landlord in general, or residents run into a dispute with landlords in general, they should have the opportunity to hold that, or like, you know, have a legal dispute if it comes to that. Obviously, we do not want it to come to that at all, but growers need to have some kind of accountability from their landlord in order to be able to access this program. Growers will look at that kind of line on the lease and be like, no way, absolutely not. There's no reason for me to put myself this at risk for something if I can just get kicked off of that lot in 30 days.
We're also advocating that leases that are paid during the 3-year Growing Green lease, which is $250 to $350, can go towards the purchase of the property, because the way that the program works is they're able to buy the property after 3 successful years of leasing. That property, however, is rated at the highest and best use. So the success stories that we have seen tend to come from folks that, you know, have organizational financial support. It's pretty difficult for growers to be able to just out that much capital. So a little bit of a suggestion that we've had is having those lease payments go towards that yes.
But you don't mention that in your planks.
We were trying to be as quick as we possibly could. We do have pamphlets that articulate kind of all of these very specific solutions that we're advocating for, and we are more than happy to have a sit-down meeting with you and walk through every single one of these. We just wanted to honor y'all's time.
Well, no, just send them to me so that we know. Look, believe you me, the council has meetings that we don't want to last a long time, but we want to resolve issues. So we don't want to hear that we resolved the issue relative to sewage and water board, but guess what? We didn't resolve the issue relative to leases, or even at least put a proposal forward, you know, so don't hesitate. And maybe you can put it in writing. I'd like to know what the concerns are. I'll give you a little bit of background. The reason I'm concerned is because in my district, there are actually a couple of locations that I think are very successful relative to urban farming. And I'd like to see urban farming take place, because I have decided after this little bit of time in office that there are going to be some areas that are always going to be difficult to develop, but they're going to have vacant land for a while. That's not a bad thing to say that they aren't going to be able to be developed. But when I see success stories, and then I see somebody create a fresh fruit and vegetable market on Piety Street, right in the middle of Desire, I'm motivated, because he's actually growing on Cluett Street or Cluett Street in the 9th Ward. I'd like to see that happen more throughout our city. So that's my level of interest in this, which is why I asked you the questions. But and I'm looking forward to working with you. Could you explain the blight citation issue? I understand that in farming for a while, the ground has to lie for a while so that it can be in a position where it can accept seeds, et cetera, et cetera. Can you give me more on that? And what we
Yes.
want to see specifically?
We want to see changes to the policies, because right now they're saying about 10 inches. And you can be cited for blight. 10 inches of almost any plant that we grow regenerative agriculturally will be blighted every time. If you want to grow and do a meadows that we do have in the Lafitte Greenway, if you go out there and look at the grass around those, it's pretty good. But those meadows are pretty high. So that would be a citation. If I had a lot that I got from Nora, owned a lot, and I would like to grow some sunflowers. Before those heads come on those sunflowers, they'll be way over 10 inches. So we want to make sure that they understand that we are growing plants that are not only help the community and beautify the community. They're helping building the soil and helping building the community also. We were using these plants regenerative agriculturally. So sun hemp, sorghum Sudan, sunflowers to give something to the soil, and the soil is giving something back in return to us when we actually plant vegetables to grow. So we're farming a little bit differently from how we used to farm. Agriculture is every day changing, and in the city it's changing much quicker than in rural America. So I just encourage us to continue to push and support policies like this, because we all need to eat. New Orleans is known for its great food, its great people, its great culture. But if you don't have the people who actually create the food to be supported as well, then I'm sorry, but that culture, it tends to die too. That's one of the main parts.
But with those changes comes a need to alert the public to what's going on.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, as I've told others who are engaged in farming, sometimes you have to talk to the people around you.
Oh, yeah.
Code enforcement is not driving throughout the city of New Orleans just looking for a particular place because they don't have that ability, because there's so much. They get a call from the neighbor that says this particular land owned by such and such is overgrown, and they don't understand it, to be very honest with you. And that's where I guess you could say, well, code enforcement should understand it. But at the end of the day, they're responding to customer concerns.
Yes.
I know this because I've had discussions with someone who is near, a plot that is being used in that regard, and they didn't fully understand. Just as I said earlier, in terms of alerting the public to the facts and also publicizing, I think that is a good idea. Take some opportunity to go to a university, and talk to the public about it, and let them come and hear more and then share information, and they would understand, I think, some of those factors, and maybe even get behind you relative to some of the issues that you want.
Yeah, definitely. We need signage. We need more support. We need to be involved in more community events. But we can go to the universities. We can go to all of these big places. But until we get in the nitty-gritty of the community, like you said, door-to-door community, like building, like that's what we really are part of. We are working with community members and organizations, like I said, trying to get some of these things pushed through. We just really need some extra help to get some of those eyes to move towards that, move towards some of those solutions that we're looking to put forward.
Right.
So
And this is a coordinated effort, right? So we are already working on developing a cover crop guide that is usable both for growers to be able to use that practice. So what Terrence was describing was cover cropping, where you put a particular kind of crop over your land while it's lying fallow, so that you can, it protects your soil and also like helps regenerate it. But we're working already with LSU extension agents to develop a training around this for code enforcement officials within Orleans Parish, but also within other parishes around the area. And Terrence is already doing community days about cover cropping. Correct me if I'm wrong, do you have one more?
Yeah, I have one more. We have one on the 29th. We have actually planning a farmer/grower networking session, kind of like what you're asking, where people can come together and talk about some of the issues that we're having, some of the solutions that we have. It's summertime coming up. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going on. So people can get informed about some of the things that's going on, and get excited about some of the things that's forthcoming in the future. So we're definitely out here spreading the knowledge, spreading the love, and getting people to look at agriculture differently, especially here in New Orleans. Like I said, everything is celebrated, especially food. So if the farmer can get that same type of love, support, then we won't have to worry about anybody here actually being hungry, and we don't have to worry about anybody. These small things, like you said, calling about a lot that you seen somebody on a couple of days ago. You seen it was doing something to it. You have no idea, but the grass is still there. So you calling somebody instead of just, hey, I seen this lot has been pretty messed up for the last couple of months. What are you doing? What are you guys doing out here? You know, that's how those connections are made. That's how a lot of the citations and all of that stuff is down. That's how we look at urban agriculture a little bit differently to be able to support that. Right now, we're looking at it as when we see agriculture, a lot of people just see straight rows, no grass. Regenerative agriculture, we don't use pesticides or herbicides. You know, you can go in a knife ward right now next to Sankofa Garden, and there are chickens stand next door to that garden. We help support those chickens because you know what? They kept flies down. They help with composting. We use their manure to help grow some of the food that we do. So what many of the communities see as a nuisance, we're seeing as something positive. We're getting eggs. Now they're chicks in that area that help supporting that. Maybe some people can go and eggs are high. We can try to get some of those chickens if this causing a problem. I'm not seeing a lot of roosters, but there are a lot of hens. So these are a lot of the issues, like you're saying, is not a thing that we have to come to you all to get, but we're looking for y'all to support so we can make sure we won't have to come to you all the time. We just want y'all to say, hey, they're doing something good. And when y'all say that, those eyes will turn and be like, oh, they are doing. Let's see how we can support.
And we've been able to connect growers within districts with other council members. And as a constituent of your district, Councilmember Green, I would love to meet with you or to get growers and to talk more about this before this comes to full council if you have any additional questions.
Yeah, I'd like you to have a meeting where I can bring some people together. Look, we have somebody growing chickens in St. Rock. We have somebody growing other products in the upper ninth ward. I'd just like to see coordination of some communications more than anything else. Look, the 80-year-old who sees somebody going on a lot and doing work thinks it's marijuana. They don't know what it is because the person who's doing it right near them, a block and a half, hasn't explained it. You know, at the end of the day, I think that there just needs to be more communication. And this is a good session to just put out there that I want to help as much as possible. But I also want to see a lot of the vacant land put to a higher and better use. And some of it's just not going to be houses.
Yes, and
And it's
people have to understand it also. And the only way that we can do that is intergenerationally. We have to make sure that the younger people see and hear those stories from those 80-year-old growers who've been there and done that, to see how the landscape of New Orleans has changed over the years, that's been through the devastation, who once family owned this land right here, but it's no longer a house right here. Those memories aren't gone, but that foundation that they once had here is gone. So how can that same family with that same land come and build something totally different, something totally new, but have those same memories, those same values, and those same connections? Like I said, I'm a 5th generation farmer. This is the only thing that I knew. This is how I grew up. So if I can take some of those small things that I learned from Tuskegee to bring and give to these kids and these elders here to make that connection, make sure that, yes, grandma and granddad did leave this land to y'all. Though it is heirs property, it is 16, 17 owners of this lot, we can still make some things happen. How can we make some things happen? And that's the only way we can make those things happen is, like you said, to communicate, to share our resources, to share our stories, and working with some great people like this. So we appreciate all that you all do. We appreciate all the work that you all do. And we just ask you to continue to support us. If you'd like to hear more about it, we do have some brochures right here. But if you just like to get to know a farmer, get to know a grower, do not hesitate to call us if you want to have a meeting where your district, you invite your district out to come and meet some of these growers, meet some of these farmers. Do not hesitate to reach out. I'm more than willing to make sure that we connect. Like I said, we can only do this intergenerationally, and then we move together. And we continue to move in silos and not work together, then we'll be back here asking you the same questions again, like literally. So we just thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I will say there is calmness that comes with working in the ground and working with plants. I grew up with my grandparents who had a little plot of land that they would farm and then can the food from. And given the fact that there are so many food deserts in New Orleans, I think that this is really important. Anita, are there online comments?
Yes, we have 16.
Okay, can we do like 7 minutes and put the rest on the record?
Sure.
Okay. And then after that, council members, we can vote to put this on the consent agenda unless you have any concerns or questions.
First comment is from Michael Giancola. I'm writing in support of R 23-244. I'm a 15-year-old New Orleans resident and researcher of climate change in the food system. The local farms, farmers markets, and community gardens add to my quality of life in New Orleans and the quality of others. If there are no farms or farmers, there's no food. Please support our local farms and farmers and this Eat Local Month and Eat Local movement. Next comment is from Bob Morrell. Urban farming will be a necessity as climate change makes traditional farming more volatile. Please support this effort. Thank you. Dar Walnick comments, the region's harvesters and food entrepreneurs are mightily important to the city in terms of production, but also to stave off climate risks by stewarding land and water. The Greener New Orleans action items for this year are easy to achieve and will mean we can begin to take steps to building a regional food system that reduces privilege and increases community. I back this campaign completely and its agenda items. Next comment is from Christina Leahew. I support AGNO resolution to support local farmers. I first decided to spend as much of my food budget per month as possible buying from local growers about 2 years ago. By doing this, I've increased my quality of life in multiple ways. My food is fresher, grown in soil from my area. I have drastically decrease the amount of processed foods I eat, and I am noticeably more healthy than I was 2 years ago. By buying local, I am supporting our economy in which I know the farmers are paid a living wage. I personally know the people growing my food, and I am less reliant on big box stores, which do not provide the quality of produce, quality of life for workers, or quality of relationships that develop between local growers and consumers. Local growers also remediate the soils and land they grow on, support our pollinator population, and educate the public about healthy eating. I am proud to eat Louisiana grown foods, and I am proud to purchase from Louisiana growers. Let's support our small farmers as much as we can. Eliza Munoz from the New Orleans Food Policy Action Council comments, New Orleans is known worldwide for our amazing food. This resolution and the work of a Greener New Orleans or a Greener NOLA help highlight those who grow, catch, cook, and create the food we all love. Thank you to the committee for your support. We look forward to working together to create a safe, sustainable, and delicious city. Micah Matthews comments, a local amateur home gardener. As a local amateur home gardener, I ask that this committee support local growers because access to locally grown food support health for New Orleans residents, gardeners, farmers, and others involved in the growing of plants are stewards of the city and are working to secure future access to health, green space, and community. Please support the Greener New Orleans campaign as they strive to create sustainable and supportive solutions for growers in the city. We have Jane Geisler who comments, as warming temperatures and increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters disrupt local patterns and stress global supply chains, hyper-local food harvesting is a logical and necessary adaptation in the fight against climate change, as well as one solution to the ever-worsening issue of food injustice. Incorporating locally grown, fished, hunted, and foraged foods has the potential to shift the way we think about culture, health, and healing, and our ability to see a path to a new mutually beneficial relationship with the land. I urge you to support R 23-244 and expand upon it moving forward, the stability and longevity of our city and its people who depend on it. Jasmine Jackson comments, I am writing to express my enthusiastic support for the Greener New Orleans campaign and the proposed resolution to be presented before City Council. As a concerned resident and advocate for a sustainable future, I believe that this resolution is a crucial step towards addressing the pressing challenges of the climate crisis and creating a healthier and more resilient New Orleans. Agriculture holds immense potential in mitigating and adapting to the climate crisis, which disproportionately affects our city. By encouraging and promoting agriculture as a vital strategy, we can achieve multiple benefits, including community wellness, biodiversity preservation, improved soil health, and enhanced air quality. It's time for New Orleans to embrace agriculture and gardening as more than just isolated activities, but integral components of a better, greener city. To effectively support the Greener New Orleans campaign at Urgent City Council and Nora to consider the following policy platform. Growing Green and Nora lease changes. We need policies that not only allow, but actively encourage and promote urban agriculture in our city by creating favorable conditions and removing unnecessary barriers as we empower residents to grow their own food and contribute to a more sustainable, resilient community. 2, accessible process for agricultural water meters. It's essential to establish a streamlined and accessible process for installing agricultural water meters for this. This will enable urban farmers to efficiently access and manage water resources, ensuring sustainable cultivation practices and reducing undue burden. 3, alteration of reporting and citing blight. The process for reporting and citing blight should be revised to better understand the needs of urban growers and account for seasonable variability of gardens. And I'm gonna get with Haley Holton, who says, thank you, Councilmember Harris and staff for your support. Eat Local Month has the opportunity to increase awareness and support for so many aspects of our food system in New Orleans, whether individuals frequent restaurants or farmers markets. Supporting local helps to strengthen the local economy, support our farmers, reduce waste, and increase sustainability. Locally grown foods and prepared dishes are often more culturally appropriate and diverse than foods found at big box stores and chain restaurants. Thank you for supporting our efforts to provide our residents with information about how to support local. Let's ensure that New Orleans remains a tight-knit community through one of the most universally enjoyed and necessary elements in life, food. And then I'll end there.
Thank you, Anita. I appreciate it. Councilmember Green, you have one more comment?
One more comment. I want to put Reverend Chuck Morris on the spot since he's here. I want to have an information session at on Desire Parkway with Reverend Chuck Morris involved because he has a facility, but he also trains guys who are involved with green infrastructure. But he's also the pastor of a church that's New Birth Baptist Church. It's on Johnny Jackson Boulevard. And surrounding it are individual parcels that are sometimes overgrown, but that they're owned by individuals or churches, for example. Might be easier to go through a process, for example, involving them than to have to go through the public agency. But I'm going to ask if he'll exchange information with you. I'd like to have an information session that I will attend and publicize widely in a way that gets us to put to use some of those lots. And his church happens to be right down the street from Barcelo's garden, which was just created for the purposes of doing what we want to see done. Urban farmers having an outlet for their products. I will request that you exchange information. I will promote it heavily. There will be people there if we can get that done.
Sir.
All right.
See it on next door. I see you on next door.
That's right.
Thank you. Anita, can we go ahead and vote on the resolution?
So move. Oh, you move.
I'll move.
You move.
Seconded by Councilmember Green. All in favor? Everyone's in favor. It will be on our consent agenda for Eat Local Month, which is also Pride Month. So it's a win-win for everyone. Thank you all for appearing today.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, council. Thank you.
Anita, what's next?
Our next agenda item is Thrive New Orleans. The presenter, we have Chuck Morris, the Executive Director.
Good to see you, my friend. I know you need no introduction, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
So I use a clicker. Thank you very much, Councilmember Harris. It's a pleasure to be here today to discuss the work that Thrive New Orleans is doing around quality of life issues. We are, of course, an organization, a nonprofit that focuses on resiliency and sustainability. Our main focus is around green infrastructure and stormwater management, but also as relates to the blighted lots in our city. How do we help be a solution to the challenge that we're faced to make sure that we ensure that we enhance the quality of life We look at it also as one of the other bigger parts of what we do also is around small business development around green and also workforce around green. We are so happy to be a partner of the city of New Orleans. We are the city's national disaster resilience operator, which means that the city has hired us or contracted with us to train the future green and sustainable workforce for the city. To date, we have trained over 125 individuals for green infrastructure and workforce jobs. But not only that, we've trained over 100 small businesses in the green infrastructure storm management space. And our goal is to link that workforce to the small businesses. And we are doing that. One of the ways that we're doing it is because we are also a prime contractor with the city of New Orleans through the NORCAP project, which is in Gentilly. And this is our hope and prayer that will spread beyond Gentilly. And I think you guys are working on that so that we can make sure that's inclusive throughout the city. But also, we are also receive funding from the major philanthropic organizations where we're able to maneuver and also work throughout the city. We've done some really great work, some good work in Hoffman Triangle and Leslie's district. Thank you, Leslie, for your support. I thank Matt for all the work that he's doing day to day to help us get that work done and really trying to enhance the quality of life in that particular neighborhood in B. Then also, I feel like I'm serving two masters here. Also, I have a church over in the Ninth Ward, and where we are a pillar, I think, of in the Ninth Ward as it relates to green infrastructure. Our Green Academy is in the Ninth Ward. Our community center is in the Ninth Ward. And we're leveraging that facility to be a training ground for businesses and also for workforce. We believe that, that there's an opportunity here to serve many of the people, Councilman Jeruso, we serve our returning citizens. Many people who are served are from underserved communities, and their stories about how they have come and how they have gotten past their barriers, and they have an on-ramp either now to workforce development or an on-ramp to small business development. We are extremely very proud of that. And so we are just as a nonprofit organization, we feel that we're well positioned. And I want to thank you also, all of you, for supporting that ARPA, $11 million in ARPA for workforce, because that also enhances the work that we are doing around workforce development and the stormwater management, but also in the small business development ecosystem there too. And so as we think about resiliency, as we think about quality of life, we're thinking about making sure that we can mitigate flooding. How do we remove concrete? How do we put in permeable pavers, rain gardens, bioswales? Those things, those are the future jobs for our city. Those jobs can pay livable wages. Those jobs have a track to upward mobility. And we think that we know that it is a space that we need to be in, and we need to be a leader in that space. I have the pleasure to serve on the mayor's climate action task force and our equity committee around that, making sure that is equitable. But it's a privilege and a pleasure and an honor and a responsibility to run a nonprofit that focuses on this work. And this work is so critical to the quality of life because of the issues that we have in our city around flooding, sustainability. It's almost hurricane season. I guess it's tomorrow. And so we're glad to be on the ground serving. And so thank you for your support and thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. I appreciate everything that you do in Hoffman Triangle and for the workforce and small business development. I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
What is the average salary for anyone interested in working in the blue or green industry?
And for entry level, it depends on where you start. And unless it's a great question, because through our program, you're able to get a heavy equipment training.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to get certified water training. You're able to get CCDER and also CDL. The basic entry level is around $15 to $16. But if you bring those other skill sets to the table, we've seen it, where your starting salary can grow exponentially. And not only when in the private sector, but also in the city sector. With Parks and Parkways, they're a partner. DPW is a partner. So if you have heavy equipment training, you have CDL, you can start off higher. But if you are coming in as a person who has green infrastructure training, but you're starting from another area, you get paid $15 an hour. Once you get benefits and all the things that you need to grow but there is a pathway to growth, and that's so important. We say it's not where you start, it's how do you fight through the system and where you finish.
Yeah, I mean, the industry is growing so much that it really is a future jobs.
Yes.
Thinking about the future and future jobs and how you can really be, even at an entry level, in the vanguard
Yes.
of the next generation of green infrastructure jobs. I know you mentioned DPW, Sewer and Water Board. We do ride-alongs all the
Yes.
time where they're talking about how they need folks to work the big machinery.
Very much
And
so.
so they're looking, and so, I thank you for training folks. Can you talk about the reduction in neighborhood flooding that you've seen as a result of green infrastructure projects?
Sure, I would say that I would start with with Hoffman Triangle. I've seen a major reduction in flooding with Hoffman Triangle. Even, excuse me, as when I was in the ministry over at Pleasant Zion. There are some members that could not make it to church because they just could not get, they would send me pictures of, they could not get to their steps. It's full of water. But now, because of the work that we've been doing, and I can't take the credit off of Thrive, we partner with Urban Conservancy also. And that work has really helped mitigate flooding in that area, especially when it comes to how homeowners. So now they have the flexibility to be able to get out, even during a rain event, they're still are able to move. I have seen some of the work also with churches, not only in Hoffman, but also in the 9th Ward, in the lower 9th Ward, where we've been able to put in permeable pavers. We've been able to help them transform their landscape, where now their congregation can come in and not have to worry about they have hills on and it's mud and all that. Now they're able to come and be able to get into the church and be able to move. So I see a lot of that. There's a lot more work to be done, but we see where it is happening in a real big way. And we've seen it in Gentilly too. I mean, that's one of the things that I know that people focused on. Gentilly, with the Gentilly Cap project, we've done probably over 100 houses there. And we can see the difference, and the homeowners can tell their stories about how they have a better quality of life because of that. And again, I know there is conversations about taking that throughout the entire city. And I think that would be a wonderful thing to do.
I have two selfish questions, and then I'll turn it over to my fellow council members. Number one, homeowners. I own a home that has steps that frequently flood. How do we contact y'all to get on the list? And what is the average price for permeable?
I would say the average price, if you want to transform your, depends on how bad it is, $25,000. Probably, but if you're just looking at a small project, it may be 5,000, it could be 10,000, depending on what it is. I mean, but if you want to transform your whole landscape, then that's going to cost you more. But if there's a specific issue that we need to go in, mitigate, that could cost you between $5,000, $10,000. And how do you get on our list? You can email me personally at chuck@thrivenola.org. And Leslie, we also have heavy equipment. So we have heavy equipment, we have trucks. And I'm a country boy too, because my hands was in the dirt in Virginia. I know you're from West Virginia. But yes, we have heavy equipment, we have the tools and the expertise to be able to do that work. And we've also done some work with the city just to fill in the gaps, and Councilmember Green knows is around mitigating blight with mowing and cutting down lots. So we're all hands on deck. We're also had a crew called the Crew of Thrive doing the Mardi Gras, where we're out there making sure that the beads were not going down the catch basins. So we want to be a part of the solution, and we're happy to be positioned well because of our partnership with the city, but also we have some really great philanthropic partners also that trust us and that are really supporting us on a real way.
The other selfish question I have has to do with District B itself. I mean, my district is encompasses a lot from the Garden District, which is very green and lush, and you can feel the temperature drop as you
Yes.
walk into the Garden District. And you walk 2 blocks down to where I live in Central City and there are no trees.
Yes.
It's hot.
Right.
We talk about Central City, we talk about New Zion City, we talk about Hoffman Triangle, Gerttown, where
Yes.
there really are concrete deserts
yes.
with no vegetation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know Matt and I are actually doing a walkthrough in Gerttown later this afternoon to talk about additional infrastructure, green infrastructure.
Sure.
I'd love to get y'all involved, but can you talk about maybe the psychological effects that you see when you see vegetation around you
Oh, my gosh.
and greenery instead of concrete?
It's a game changer psychologically. He's a game changer. You're more serene. I think that you're more peaceful. But I also think that I know that the heat island effect is real. So the person who, if it's 3 degrees less in the Garden District and 4 degrees or 3 degrees higher in Gerttown, that's a problem. And not only is it's a health problem too. We look at it and say, well, psychologically, yes, but it's also a health problem. And we also know, Leslie, that Councilmember Harris, is that some of the people who live in Gerttown in those areas, they can't afford the AC. They can't afford the cooling stations they need to be successful. So we not only they have the burden of the heat island effect and the temperature's higher, they got the burden of the cost of it. And so we have to do something to mitigate that. And I think trees, I think getting rid of the concrete, I think about stormwater management interventions, rain gardens, biospheres. Let's make our city more greener. And let's make sure that we come together to be able to do it. But again, people don't understand, people sometimes I think forget, it takes skills to do it. You can't say all of a sudden I want to be, no, that's why going through our training, going through our cohorts, we have a graduation tonight. Or we're graduating our workforce. We're also graduating our small businesses. So the expertise are needed. We're training people for the expertise and we're training businesses to become contractors. And that's how we can go in there and really do the job that's needs to get done. And make sure that, but also one of the key things too is that you want the people we're trying to build ambassadors. So people in Gerttown and other Zion, all those people can have people who look like them, who are in the space, and they can be ambassadors, and they can go tell their grandmothers and their grandfathers, and we need to change this. This is a need, and that's what we got to start doing. They got to see themselves not only from an environmental perspective, but also from an economic perspective from this work. My grandson can get a job. I don't have any grandkids, but if I had a grandkid, they can get a job. My cousin can get a contract, and we're also going to be healthier, and we're going to have a better quality of life. All that goes hand in hand, and we got to make sure we understand that.
Thrive is an apt name for your organization. Councilmember Green, do you have any questions?
Yes, I appreciate your work, Reverend Marshall, very much. And I appreciate the fact that you're motivated with especially the guys that I see at your graduation. I mean, you're having a tremendous impact by having them involved with certainly something that's promising in terms of an industry, but especially a returning citizen being trained on something so that he has a permanent skill
Yes.
that is so valuable in our community.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know that it happens, but it's out there, and your persons who take advantage of that resource have something to feel good about.
Sorry.
Interestingly enough, I don't have a question, but you're going to help me with something because of the things that you talked about.
Sure.
Light reduction,
Uh-huh.
and also just making people feel better about what they see in our
Yes.
community,
Yeah.
whether it be on Wilton Street, whether it be in other areas where
Sure.
you're
Fluid, whatever you
fluid,
call
you
it,
know,
whatever, yeah.
things that you're doing. I want to tell you that I appreciate that, and I want members of the public to know that there are organizations such as yours that are doing work to enhance our community. It's a long way that we have to go to be where we
Sure.
need to go.
Yeah.
But I represent an interesting district. I represent a district which includes some communities, for example, let's say, for example, Oak Park and Bancroft and north of Allen, Tucson, beautiful communities,
Sure.
lots of trees, lots of other infrastructure that makes a difference. Homes that are well kept because the people feel good about their community. But it also includes the area, the desire area, where
Sure.
there sometimes are no trees,
Sure.
where there are blighted houses. That's why we've been focusing so much on blight. People say, well, why 10 million for blight? Because we need to spend 100 million, because children who are walking throughout the Desire community to go to the grocery store or to
Yes.
go to the school, they feel many times that the city is not committed to them
Sure.
because of what they see. And I know that it's been going on for a while, but the bottom line is that we have to focus on our infrastructure and what our children see and what our children appreciate if we're going to address some of those issues, psychological issues. If we're
Sure.
going to address crime, for example, yes, crime is much more complex than that, but I can tell you that a young person who grows up from the age of 4 years old and walks past blight every day on their way to a store, on their way to school, on their way to church, they feel a certain way about the city. No excuses for
Sure.
anything that hurts someone else except for this. We've got to do better as a city to eliminate blight and get involved with industries that have a good future. We talked
Yes.
about farming today, and you're going to get involved with that. But I just want to thank you because I know that you have a commitment to what you're doing, and it's making a difference with the people who are involved with your industry. And also, I see by going there, I see by going to the graduations, I see by going to the activities that you have, that they feel positive about something going on involving them and
Sure.
making their city better.
Sure.
And I appreciate that work. And just
Sure.
let us know how we can continue to work in that area
Sure.
with you.
Unless, in closing, if this is closing, unless they have any more questions, it's just, Councilmember Harris. We believe in that there are a couple things that keep us back when it comes to people that we deal with. One is we don't go deep enough. So we have to stop checking boxes. We have to go deeper with individuals. Because some of these individuals they have so much trauma in their past that you can't scrape the surface and say, okay, go have at it. We got to go deeper. And then we got to also think about how do we remove barriers? What is your barrier? Is it housing? What is your barrier? Is it food insecurity? We deal with all that. Is it psychological? Is it mental health? So that's why we pride ourselves in having a village approach at Thrive. Are we perfect? No. But people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They at least know that we care, and that opens the door for them to share with us, for us to try to help them get to next.
It makes a tremendous difference that you care. And as we address some of those issues, I want the public to know that when we're focusing on certain areas, there's a reason, because we know that those having an impact in those areas will make a difference in our city. I like to say that it's for example, the 25-year plan to help to rebuild the Desire area. There's so much to be done. Blight reduction, also building, and I'm glad to see construction going on. I'm glad to see you all establishing the school, for example.
Right.
All of those things make a difference. It's going to take a while to get back to where it was going, but we have to start somewhere. But we have to recognize that there are complexities and that make people feel the way they feel about themselves and
Sure.
about their city and
Sure.
about their municipalities.
Sure.
And you're addressing some of them, and so are we here at the council and in my office, and we're going to continue to work together.
Sure. And I want Councilman Harris to also know, and B, and Hoffman, we're just beginning to get this momentum going as it relates to also the houses, the individuals, the churches, just trying to make sure that we have good momentum.
Yep.
We got some traction. Now let's get some real good momentum going, because it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
And I can feel it, I can see it. I mean, I think about the blight and the
Yes.
trucks that we need to get towed and all the
Yes.
things that we're
Yes.
working on
And
every
clean up,
single
Sarah,
day.
clean
Clean
up.
up.
Yes, indeed.
But ready to go. And listen, the event that y'all were at where you're giving away clothes and
Yes.
swimwear and,
Yes.
the things that people need to get them through the summer. I just want to thank you
Yeah.
personally for that too.
Well, you're more than welcome. It's a
Thank-
pleasure.
And just thank you for being here. I know you got a lot to do. Are there any online comments for this matter? All right. Well,
I got no comments.
that's a
All
good
right.
thing. Thank you so much. Thank you for
so
taking the
much.
time.
Take care.
Anita, next agenda item.
Next item is the NOLA Tree Project. The presenter Connie Udo, who's the director of NOLA. Tree.
Last but not least, Connie, thank you for sitting with us.
Push through it or you click, I click the thing, how does this work? So when I'm gonna move the slide, I just do what?
I do this one. Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm not very techie. I'm a tree planter and an old one. So thank you for asking me to come. I don't know if you're aware of NOLA Tree Project. Were established in response to that 100 to 200,000 trees lost to Hurricane Katrina in 2007. Formerly Hike for Katrina, and because I was entrenched in the recovery work with the Episcopal Diocese after Katrina for 10 years, I got to know the founder very well. We were both planting at the same time, became very close friends and partners, and I eventually took it over from Monique. Changed the name to NOLA Tree Project in 2000 at the 10-year anniversary, mainly because we wanted to be more than just Katrina. We knew there were issues, climate change, environmental. So we wanted to be, though we've kept our tree count going, the mission to replant 100,000 trees, get them into the city. We have become more about sustainability, stormwater management, heat index, all of the environmental issues that face us. So NOLA Tree Project is just more of a direct name. So I'll move on. So that's basically our mission statement and the history of the organization. Currently, like I said, we keep our tree count going. We're at a little over 73,000 trees since we started. So this is through three programs that we implement. Urban forestry is actually our plantings. We plant citywide, huge list of public green space, parks, schools, communities, neighborhoods, community centers, etc. The Big Treesy giveaway. This is something that I started because I was seeing some things that weren't working when we went in and planted neighborhoods ourselves, gave people the tree, planted the tree. I noticed that it was failing and that people didn't take care of the tree. And so I began to rethink the program and thought, well, what if I came in to an area, 500 trees or more, have people come to me, get their tree, have education on how to plant and maintain the tree. And that program has just been such a win-win-win. 30,000 trees have been given away to the residents of New Orleans. And we don't count this as a planted tree ourselves, but it is in that 73 count. So when I say, I've planted 40,000, but we've given away 33,000, hoping that they truly do get planted. And I find what I've learned in this is that people need to be invested. And when we did it all for them, they were not invested. So the trees died. They wouldn't water their trees. So now when they come to us, I find that they're excited. They want the education. They bring their kids, they bring their dogs. It's a family event. The kids are excited. They go home, they plant the tree together, and they're now invested to water that tree and maintain that tree. Therefore, we have so much healthier, happier trees on residential properties. Our Grow Healthy Kids was a program we started in schools to put fruit orchards. Food desert in public schools. Children didn't even know fruit grew on trees. So it had an educational component as well as how nice it would be to be at school and to be able to pick an orange or something for a snack. That we were doing, and we did about 12 schools, and then COVID hit. We couldn't get into the schools. We've not revamped that program yet. So I'm very focused in the urban forest and the Big Treesy at the moment. That explains the urban forestry everywhere we've planted. As you can see, thousands of trees, city park, nature center, all neighborhoods, etc. That's in our forest, Big Treesy giveaway. This is kind of what it looks like. So every district of the city has giveaway, thanks to many of the council members gives, I get a Harris grant. Entergy is our title sponsor, couldn't do it without them. And as I said, we're growing, like I did 2 in Lafitte this year. I did 2 in St. Bernard Parish. So everybody is catching on that this is a just incredible way to get a lot of trees out there. I could go plant 50 trees in the morning in a neighborhood, or I could push out 500 in a morning. So it just made more sense because we have a huge, as you know, tremendous effort ahead of us to get New Orleans reforested. So this was done at Dockville Farms in St. Bernard. We also sell fruit trees as a fundraiser there. And we get all of our beautiful citrus from the Becknells. Plaquemines Parish is become an incredibly successful fundraiser, and people just, we're getting fruit trees out there now. So I think we sold over 5,000 fruit trees in the last 2 years. Yeah. So this is Big Treesy. That's Grow Healthy Kids, which I said we're kind of re-looking at that because again, I found that the schools necessarily weren't taking care of the trees. And it was very disappointing because that was part of the deal. I come in and I plant, but I don't have the ability to maintain your trees for you, water your trees. So I didn't see the program as really sustainable and successful because the schools didn't live up to their end of the deal. So I'm rethinking that program. This is just our history. Many of you know I did, because I came from disaster response in Katrina. I know a lot about how to get a house and things like that. I just felt, I just incorporated it because hurricanes hit when we're not busy. So it was a way to keep us as a full-time organization, and I just umbrella disaster response under it. Since COVID, we delivered 420,000 meals to the residents of New Orleans, 17 zip codes from our base on Fillmore and Gentilly. And after that, I began to rethink all the disaster work. And since then, I've decided to transition out of disaster work to just focus on our tree organization and sustainability of the trees, maintenance of the trees. So we work super closely with Parks and Parkways as a great partner to me. And I feel like they think the same as us. We help them with things they don't have the staff to do, like trimming and mulching, and they help me. They design all of my NutriGround plantings. I follow their protocol. And this year in Gentilly, I don't know if you've noticed, Eugene, but we did 150 trees, 30-gallon, huge trees on Vermilion, Cameron, and Pasteur, which have been totally left out of the picture because we were held up with DPW, sewage and water. I'm like, don't go in there because we're doing infrastructure work, which never really happened. So we finally got the green light this year. Residents are thrilled because they felt very left out because they saw everybody else being planted and kept wondering why not us. And that was why. So, and that came from Parks and Parkways grant. We're now going to do Fillmore from St. Bernard to the London Canal, as all of those palms died. That's next year. So we're citywide, you know. So that was COVID. That's pretty much my presentation. I would like to end with this, though. I know your quality of life, Joe. I'm going to pick an old bone. I am one who feel like I have given my heart and soul to the recovery of my city for 18 years. And I have been forced to live next to the Katrina blighted property in Lakeview on Vicksburg that I've been on the news several times about. Joe has been with us. We pushed to get the pool ordinance passed with you guys. And we're still fighting this situation. Code enforcement turns a deaf ear to us. Judges let her off the hook at hearings all the time. And so we're just at a point we don't know what to do. I urge you all to, the laws have to change. So this quality of life, the thing that code enforcement is like the house has to be falling on another house to be torn down, that needs to change. I'm seeing a Jefferson Parish house getting torn down by the city. It's not falling on any structure. They gave that homeowner a timeline, which I think you need to put in to law. Homeowners get a timeline, 90 days to make a decision after X amount of hearings or whatever. But to go for 18 years, 18 years, took me 15 to get the pool filled in. I just got the pool filled in this year, only because I got the mayor's ear, finally, after my daughter was carjacked. That's how it happened. It wouldn't have happened had I not had that leverage. 18 years. Why? Jefferson Parish doesn't allow it. St. Tammany doesn't allow it. Baton Rouge doesn't allow it. I don't know why the city tends to side with the violator, constantly siding with the violator. And not us. It's what you told Thrive. We feel like the city just doesn't care about us, lets us down. We're the taxpayers. We're the community givers like myself. Yet this homeowner is allowed to keep her property. And we have possums breeding. I had to call mosquito control. Thank God I have a good relationship with them because I have helped them with trees and landscaping their building. They had to go set traps. They're catching them. They're breeding in the high grass. Door was wide open. Anybody could have gone in, set up shop in there. So I just urge you to look. The fines don't seem to work in cases like this. Doesn't matter. And she's let off the hook all the time.
Thank you. No, Councilmember Deruso, but what I will say is that this council takes blight very seriously. We've changed blight laws. We've increased fines. We, in my office, do blight ride-alongs. We have torn down houses. I know Councilmember Deruso has filled in pools throughout his district. But I'm gonna not speak for him, but just know that it is something that we're concerned about and that we are actually actively addressing. So I want you to know that, but
And I know that. And Joe, you know, he's worked side by side advocating with us. He's been in the fight with us for years before he was even city council member. And, you know, but I don't know. I just think there's other laws that have to change. You know, you've got to look at some other laws and give timelines and quit letting people just go years like this. This is all over the city.
Yeah, but Connie, I guess I'm gonna hone in on the last thing you say, which is this is something I say all the time. I can buy the light bulb, but I can't make anybody screw it in. And I think there are a lot of rules on the books, and it was not done correctly, but there was about ready to be a demolition at a car wash in Leslie's district.
I saw that.
Because it was viewed as being an inherent danger. And I struggle with the fact that this has not been 6 months, a year. We have things that are a year, 2 years, 3 years, they get caught in title research. But 18 years in any neighborhood, whether it's New Orleans East, Lower Nine, Tilly, Uptown, Garden District, Lakeview, is too long, period, full stop. And we are very committed to seeing this one through because I am frustrated with the fact that this has affected neighbors for such a long time. And look, I'll say this while now I'm on my soapbox a little bit to wrap up, is we talk a lot about public safety. And I think my colleagues know where I'm headed with this. Public safety is not just NOPD or the fire department or EMS. It is also blight reduction. It is mosquito control. It is safety and permits. It is code enforcement. All of those are part of having high quality of life. And you and Bridget and others who live next to this house that has been a health hazard, not just an
Right.
eyesore, a health hazard.
Right, black mold,
Right.
rats.
For nearly 2 years, and the door is wide open right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it is literally the door, you can look inside. I looked in, I mean, I was there a couple of weeks ago.
Right,
You can see the house is gutted. Nobody's living in there. It hasn't been tended to in 20 years.
Yeah.
It took us 4 years to fill in the pool. It's just, there comes a time when there's action. And I would even say this, I never, ever want the council or the administration to be in a position to violate the law. But I think you can take calculated risks with knowing that you may face a legal challenge based on some action that you're going to take, and understand it's okay to take that risk from time to time, given the entire set of circumstances.
especially knowing the homeowner has money. She got 150,000 road home money. So, and she's, you know, her history, she's an only child left. She has another blighted property, by the way, on Hawthorne that her aunt left her. This girl is a real estate mogul in Lakeview if she would just sell something, but she's not going to do anything unless she's totally
Yeah.
pushed and forced and property taken away or whatever, or threat, you know. So I didn't want to get away from this. I love doing the trees. I love serving my community, but I feel very hurt by all that I've given, and I cannot get anything done with this situation, and my whole neighborhood's suffering because of it, you know, feels it. So, I'm going to continue with NOLA Tree Project, despite what my daughter went through, and, you know, and the blight situation and other things that are going on in the city, but it's getting harder and harder to want to give. So my goal is 100,000. I hope I'm alive to make it.
You only have 30,000 left.
Yeah,
That's fine.
and we're averaging about 5,000 a year
That's amazing.
between tree giveaways and plantings. So it's really,
Yeah,
I might make it.
you're there. You're there.
Maybe in a wheelchair, but I think I'll make it. So
Councilmember
anyway,
Freeman.
any questions on trees or?
I want to thank you for the focus on trees in general. I mean, obviously, you knew I kind of do the same thing. And even before
Right.
I joined the council, I did it a lot. I worked with the Boy Scouts and things like that. There's nothing like going back to an area, and you'll be going back to Pasteur, and you'll be going back
Oh,
to
yes.
Fillmore and things like that, appreciating it 5 years from now. But it makes a difference in how people feel about the community and also their city when they see that the city is maintaining and growing green infrastructure.
Yes.
And I will tell you, as I've said before, and you can help in to whatever extent you can. In the 25 years down the line, as we look at our city, I hope that in low to moderate income areas that have been relatively ignored, that we have the same sort of transformation that the young people can see.
Yes.
I always emphasize that there is never, ever an excuse for hurting anyone, but sometimes people hurt themselves and they hurt others because they feel bad about their surroundings.
Yeah.
And there are some places in our city why blight reduction is so important, because some children especially grow up and they see blight until they're 18 years old. And they
Mhm.
walk past areas and they don't see a tree as they walk past. And you mentioned in your presentation, kind of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of reality that sometimes the children didn't know that
Yeah,
that trees are where fruit grows. Yeah,
Right.
because they don't see any trees. They
yeah.
don't really think about trees at all. They don't even know that trees can keep
Airfit.
shade, create shade. If you go to the former Desire Housing Development area, the government has done fine, except they didn't plant any trees, you know, and at the end of the day, people who are gonna be there for a while are gonna come back and visit others, you know, are gonna feel that that wasn't a part of our city. So it really is a part of our city to have green infrastructure. And even though we have beautiful areas in our city, we have areas such as where I live,
Right.
you know, in the Gentilly Terrace area and also, you know, other communities where you see a lot of greenery. It's still not enough. And it's still not where we should be. So your
Right.
work is appreciated and we just need to continue to
Thank
rebuild
you.
the green
Well,
infrastructure.
I think the point that Thrive Pastor ED made and the pastor was you have to, there has to be a mindset shift. So I'm going to give you an example. Holly Grove, we tried to plant Holly Grove 5 years ago or so. Went to community meetings, and I was really taken back, and also in Bunny Friends, that people didn't want trees because A, they didn't want the mess, B, they want to park wherever they want to park, and C, they want to be able to see. The main thing, they didn't want trees because people could hide behind trees. And that was a big concern. So I think there's got, you know, hopefully Thrive, those kind of people could go in front of us to help. People have to want these trees. Also, you have a lot of rentals and those people, the landlords do not care about the trees.
Right.
They don't take care of the trees and the renters will literally roll over the trees. So, I mean, I've been out there long enough doing this that I've hit these obstacles. We have tried. That's another reason why I do Big Treesy. I go to Trinity Community Center in Holly Grove and give away 500 trees. So people can walk if they need to, get a tree and take it home. They can bike and take it home. It's a 5-gallon tree. So Central City, I go to Southern Food and Beverage. I try to target New Orleans East, Louisiana Nature Center. These areas that desperately do need trees to try to change that mindset, but also get them invested in it and have them want the trees, you know? So that is a hurdle that I think people don't see in neighborhoods, and that hopefully we can get that shifted, because it won't really work if there's not a mindset shift.
Well, then we have to emphasize and focus on, for
The
example.
benefits.
Right,
Right.
the benefits. And
And we do.
we talk about that more now. I think that we talked about that in general. For example, in the Pontchartrain Park community, the vast majority of the people are having trees planted in front of their homes, you know?
Yes.
And so it's working out well. You saw that there wasn't tremendous opposition to past year, but I know it was on the public right away as
Right.
opposed to in that.
But you
in that
know, when
service
we were
area.
out
But
there with the residents coming out saying, you know, you could have trees on your other side in front of your house. And many of them were like, oh, we don't want that.
yeah, well, part of
So,
part
you
of the
know,
reason is-
it's really sad in a way. But the education or something has to shift. that
Yeah, well,
people want these
just keep
trees.
in mind, I think that people are hearing more and understanding that
Yeah.
trees help lower the mean temperature. They also, you know, help to reduce flooding. I think that we've been saying that a lot, and projects such as the Gentilly Resilience District
Yes.
project are going to talk about the various things that you can do for flood reduction. But some people didn't understand permeable pavement and something
Right.
bioswales, even though the city needs to do a much better job of maintaining its bioswales. They've seen them work in Gentilly in areas, and some of
And
the.
it's working in the
yeah.
7th Ward with Angela Chalk and Healthy Community Service.
Right.
We have helped her plant over 400 to 500 trees in the 7th Ward.
Right.
In the neighborhoods. So you need somebody like an Angela Chalk and ambassador in every neighborhood, educating, shifting the mindset. And then we'd happily go in.
Yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction. Keep
Yeah.
up the work and
All right,
how we can
thanks,
help.
y'all. I gotta get to a luncheon at.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank
All
you
right.
for waiting and thank you for all the work you do, and we'll work on your blighted house.
Please.
Thank you. Anita, I'm gonna move to adjourn.
All right.
We have a couple of online comments.
Can we just go ahead and post those?
Sure.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and move to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Green. All in favor? All eyes have it. Thank you.
I once went to